Call to order a special meeting for the normal local liquor commission. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos.
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz.
Here.
Mr. Nord.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Cummings.
Here.
Mr. Preston.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
First item of business is approval of the minutes of the special meeting of September 20th, 2021.
Move approval.
Second.
Any changes? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mr. Nord.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Cummings.
Aye.
Mr. Preston.
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Next item is a 2021-2022 liquor license application for the town of Normal, doing business as the Normal Theater at 209 North Street in Normal.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there discussion on this item? Mr. Nord.
Thank you. Do we have estimated revenues versus the cost for selling liquor?
Oh, I think it's on. I personally don't have that information. I don't know the answer to that question, Mr. North.
Okay, so my concern is we're approving to sell liquor, which is something new for the town, which comes with liability as well, and challenges for staffing because you have to be of age. And I just think we should have those decisions before we approve. Thank you.
Further on this item, Mr. McCarthy?
I just want to remind my colleagues and anybody watching. Better. There we go. Sitting too far left. I just want to remind everybody that the town does have an outlet that serves alcohol, so we do have some experience on this, and to try to put everybody's mind at ease that we've got a good, successful history on that. So I'm certain that that we've looked at this in this department that's already doing it to be able to make good decisions and good budgetary responsible decisions for us. So I'm supportive.
Further on the item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Nord.
No.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Cummings.
Aye.
Mr. Preston.
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye. The liquor license for the Normal Theater is approved. Item 5, 2021-2022 liquor license application for Fiala Brothers Beer LLC, doing business as Fiala Brothers Brewery and Beer Hall at 127 East Buford
For
Street.
approval. Second.
Is there discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Cummings.
Aye.
Mr. Preston.
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mr. Nord.
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye. That liquor license is approved. That concludes our business tonight. A motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Cummings.
Aye.
Mr. Preston.
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mr. Nord.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye. The Liquor Commission is adjourned. Call to order a regular meeting for the Normal Town Council for Monday, November 15th, 2021. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos.
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz.
Here.
Mr. Nord.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Cummings.
Here.
Mr. Preston.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no public commenters tonight, so we'll go right to the omnibus agenda. Items considered routine and will be handled with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. Ms. Smith?
Yes, I would like to pull the agenda item for the underpass, which is...
Ms. Smith, your microphone is not on.
Which is item I.
Ms. Smith? I'm sorry, Ms. Lorenz.
I'd like to pull the bills, item B.
Mr. Nord?
I'd like to pull item D as in David.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
A second. Items considered on the omnibus tonight are approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of November 1st, 2021, a resolution permitting to close a portion of US Highway 51 for the annual J.C.'s Christmas Parade, a resolution authorizing staff to accept the base bid and all alternates and execute a contract with Autobahn Incorporated for parking garage maintenance services in the amount of $139,670. A resolution authorizing the purchase of a Turfco CR-15 large area top dresser and material handler from Burris Equipment for $37,907. A resolution to waive the formal bidding process and accept quotes totaling $84,545.87 from Dell for the purchase of computer equipment, and a resolution conditionally approving the final plat of the re-subdivision of Lot 2 and re-subdivision of Lots 1, 2, and parts of Lot 3, 4, and vacated Ward Drive having to do with the shops at College Hills. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Nord,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Aye.
Ms. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. Those items are approved. Item B is a report to receive and file town of normal expenditures for payment as of November 10th, 2021. Ms. Lorenz?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Lorenz?
Yeah, I just have a couple of clarifying items. On page 2 of the bills, under General Fund, City Manager Communications, there's a $1,500 ad and visitors guide. I'm assuming that's CVB visitors guide. What was that ad for?
I believe this is in their big magazine that they put together, but I'll have to check into that. This was under the communications department, so I'll find out.
Okay. We give,
And you're right, this would be CVB, not
yeah,
CVB.
it's not CBD.
Mhm.
We give about $100,000 to them annually as part of our support to them. I was just kind of surprised that they charged us for an ad, so that's what kind
Sure, I'll
of drew
check.
my attention to that. Another question, I think I only have another one. All the way at the bottom, page 22, just clarification, it's under the Community Development Fund. Got a couple there, Regional Housing, it looks like, McLean County Regional Planning Commission, and then Mid-Central Community Action. Are both of those for housing assistance, CDBG funds?
Well, the special programs for Mid-Central Community Action, that is the COVID-related housing assistance that we
Approved.
approve, yes,
And they're managing?
correct.
Okay,
The Regional Planning Commission, I believe that is our support of that regional housing study.
oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Nord?
Thank you. On page 26 of the expenses, under Stormwater Management Fund, there's an expense to Farnsworth Group for Towanda Avenue construction services, I assume. What is the scope of that project? Is that road or what is this?
The Towanda Avenue, I believe this ties to the bridge project, which is partially funded out of the Stormwater Fund. And Farnsworth, I believe this is accurate statement, Farnsworth Group we've contracted with them to provide on-site construction service oversight.
This is a bridge going over what?
The creek and the trail, it's just north of Vernon, the bridge replacement project?
Okay, going over the railroad tracks?
No,
The creek and the trail on Towanda Avenue?
yes, just north of Vernon.
Okay, do we have something in the budget that we've said we're going to replace that we approved?
The project is nearly done. Yes, council approved the bridge
Oh,
replacement project.
okay. All right, sorry, I was thinking way further north. I was thinking Fort
Right.
Jesse when you were saying Vernon.
Yep,
All right,
no.
sorry, now it's clear. All right, that's the only question I have.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Nord?
No.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That item is approved. Item D is a resolution executing an agreement with Charnet Associates for design and construction documents for the new Lucky Climber at the Children's Discovery Museum in an amount not to exceed $89,400. Mr. Nord?
I so move.
Second.
Mr. Nord?
This is going to be reimbursed by the foundation, correct? That's the agreement?
This is actually going to be covered by the grant that has been awarded for this project.
Did the money go to the foundation and the foundation's going to reimburse the town?
I believe the money does go through the foundation so they can track it in terms of support, but yes, it will end up in the town's general fund.
Okay, and then this is just information for the rest of the council. So there's no policy that says that the foundation pays for exhibits. That's just something that's been traditionally done, because after the last meeting, I asked for the policy for it, and there's nothing that's been executed. Is that correct?
I suppose that's a correct statement, other than their bylaws. The foundation's bylaws indicate what their purpose is and their mission and history, and we do have an operating agreement between the two entities.
The operating agreement is what you sent me, but you didn't have anything that was executed that the council had approved.
Correct.
Okay,
I didn't have an executed copy. It has been approved by the foundation board, but basically identifies how they function.
sure, but we don't have something that the council has approved. So the foundation has approved something, and in the write-up that you sent me, it was supposed to have come to the council. There's a signature line, and it has not come to us yet. So Ms. Reese had mentioned that it takes 4 council members for us to codify the agreement with the foundation. So we need to discuss as a council if we want that to go forward, to actually make it official policy rather than just tradition, which is what we're working off of now. Thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, I just kind of like to level set with my colleagues and anybody who's interested in the Children's Discovery Museum Foundation and how it really works and the relationship between the foundation and the museum itself. And so what we have is a nonprofit run by volunteer citizens in our community that have gotten together to raise money to help install exhibits and make sure that we have a high quality children's museum in our community and that it stays affordable. So that's really what's going on here. I don't feel compelled to try to strong arm volunteer citizens with some policy to compel them to pay something. It's been a great relationship so far. I think over $1 million of funding was talked about by the board president last meeting. He was here to share with us. It's really a wonderful success story of citizens coming together to say how important an asset like the Children's Discovery Museum is in our community, and hey, we're going to pitch in to help pay for it. It's wonderful. It's a nonprofit. Of course, they have to have bylaws by state law that compel them to follow certain rules, and so that's on them to follow. But for me, and my perspective on this is for any volunteers in our community that want to help us fund things like the Children's Discovery Museum, I just want to say thank you. Please keep it up, and we greatly appreciate your efforts and support.
Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Cummings?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. This is actually a very good thing that's taking place. I remember my time on the board. When I first came to the board, this actually came before us in replacing the Lucky Climber. And so to see some years down the line, because I haven't been on the board for about 5 years now, this is a great thing. But also taking it back to the question at hand here that's before us, actually questions the integrity of the board and the true relationship between the board and the town. And being a former board member, it has been strong. It's been a strong relationship and one that's been highly valued because we understand the value that the museum brings to the community. I think we slight ourselves by diminishing it for whatever other purposes we have. And so I feel like it's a non-existent question to even begin to go down a rabbit hole of doing, I'm trying to think about how to put this, but micromanagement. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole to dig into the minutia to micromanage people, and especially servants, having been one of those servants before, and knowing what it's like to fundraise in order to push the vision of the museum forward. And we miss the fact that there's also a grant involved, which is another great thing for us. Every time we bring a grant back to this community, it's a job well done. It's a kudos to us when we're able to do that. So my hats is off to the team for finally getting this done. We know sometimes it takes time. We knew this would be a huge undertaking and cost because of the type of climber it is and where it's located in the building. And so to sit here years later, knowing that I was at the beginning of the conversations and to see it come to fruition, I am so happy for this moment.
Mr. Preston.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be brief with my comments. I don't see this issue that we're actually voting on this evening as one that really merits a lot of contention back and forth. And the only piece of this that I want to draw attention to and reiterate is that the $89,000 that we are voting on is to be covered by a grant that the CDM and their foundation were able to secure for just under about $570,000, if I'm not mistaken, and that's great. And I don't think that's something that any people really should have exception with one way or another. So I'm glad to take a quick moment and recognize again that thank you to the CDM for getting this grant so that what we're voting on is reimbursable and not paid out of us or the foundation permanently. Thanks.
Ms. Lorenz and then Mr. Nord.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Preston, I'm glad that you kind of refocused us on the vote at hand, and I echo all of your thoughts there. The only addition I would say, and not for further discussion here, but if there is some concern about whether or not we have completely executed agreements, let's just get to the bottom of that. It sounds like bylaws are there, so that's good. But if there's some concern about a document that hasn't been executed, let's just follow back up on that. So,
Mr. Nord.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to bring this back to, is that the CDM Foundation actually approved and signed the document at one of their meetings. The council has not done their part yet. So the ball has been dropped in our lap, and this happened back in 2017. So we just need to finish that process.
Mr. Day, you seem to be uncomfortable with what's going on. Is there anything you'd like? Okay.
I'm happy.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
aye.
Mr. Nord?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The item is approved. Item I is a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement with WSP USA Incorporated for Phase 2 and Phase 3 engineering services for the Underpass project at Uptown Station in an amount not to exceed $3,291,586.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Smith.
Thank you. So my main purpose in pulling this item from the Omnibus agenda was to provide some focus, because while we as a council are approving services in the amount of $3.2 million, I do want it to be clear that the town's obligation for this project is offset by a myriad of funding sources that we have worked diligently to compile to fund this project. So it remains the town's total obligation at present is 1.692 million, and our vote is on the design, which is a larger number, but that funding will come from build funds, federal funds, non-federal funds, and some state funds, correct?
That is correct.
And what's the process for when we make those expenditures? How long do we have to wait before we get reimbursement from some of these entities?
I don't have the answer to that question. I guess if Mr. Otto is handy, he can refer to that. But when the grant agreements are all executed, we've executed on our behalf. Grant agreements have to be executed by our state and federal partners, and then when at some point we can start the drawdown process. But I'll let Mr. Otto explain.
That's correct, Ms. Reese. The process, we would pay the bill and then submit reimbursement to the various entities, whether that be the ICC or IDOT or the FRA through the build grant. So their processes vary. I don't have the exact estimate on the time frame from reimbursement. A lot of it depends on the time of year, their staffing level at the time of submission, and various factors.
And all of the detail that is included with our packet, on the town website, where might the average citizen click to get all of this detail supporting the allocation between the various sources and the items included in the budget? Because I had gone to the town website to find the agenda one time and discovered I had the agenda, but I didn't have all this detail. And my husband tells me he succeeded in finding this detail. So where would a citizen find all of that information?
There's a lot of information available on our website. One could start with Chatbot Hue, which is our new tool. You can type in the category, the topic you're looking for, and then options will come up. Alternatively, this council packet item that you're looking at is available on the website under the city council page, where we have choices for agenda and then reports, and you can find the most recent reports, and that would be in that link. Additionally, for further information on the Underpass project, on the main page of the town's website, there has been a link, I believe it still exists, to the Underpass project, and you can click on that and find historical information as well.
And I do also want to highlight that the bid includes a segment for public involvement. So there will still be the opportunity for ordinary citizens to get involved in the discussions about the design element. And I wanted to make sure that is clear, that it's part of what will happen with this project. But I'm very pleased to see that we are going from the someday to somehow, and I'm borrowing that from a musical I was at this weekend. So it's just good to see such a long dream becoming a reality. Thank you.
Further on this item? Ms. Lorenz?
Okay, so I don't know, a few notes that I made in preparation for this. I've got, here we go. This has been a long time coming, and probably one of our bigger steps forward following our July vote. It is a $25 million project, probably once in a decade, I guess we decided when I met earlier. So I just want to kind of put out there that I have a lot of interest in this. It's not meant to be by any means negative or challenging what you know. I just want to go on record to say that this is a big project and one that's had a lot of high profile and interest from the community. So I think I want to commit as a representative of members of this community to stay very, very informed on this next chapter, Phase 2, and the design portion of Phase 3. So I spent a lot of time going through this, particularly the scope of project Exhibit A, And thank you, Mr. Otto and Ms. Reese, for taking some time today to allow me to go through a lot of my questions. You know, I would characterize myself as perhaps a healthy skeptic and a cautious supporter of this project. And so for that reason, you know, like I said, I want to stay very, very involved with it. To that end, I would like for us to consider this topic and the next, you know, year and a half of what I think year and a half of this phase 2 and phase 3, that it be a standing item in our regular updates, our regular meetings. And by that I mean our 2-on-1 meetings, our preparatory meetings. And that, you know, obviously anything of greater significance, such as, you know, timeline delays and so forth, be brought to this larger body when new decisions have to be made. But, you know, assuming that everything will be on time and under budget, I just really, really want to implore staff to keep us more informed, not less informed, on the details of how this proceeds. And I hope my colleagues will join me in that as well. We can talk afterwards in follow-up discussions about what that might look like and how we can make sure those requests happen. Also, to that end, I would advocate for a fair amount of public outreach. I know that part of the scope of the project, WSP is required to do that, but I think I would like our staff to even enhance that with however that might look. Social media and traditional media and so forth, just to keep this awareness high in knowledge, so that there isn't a lack of information out there, because we all know what can happen with a lack of information. So with that, that's kind of my statement that I want to say. I do have a couple of questions. One, when will the master planning of the south portion of Uptown happen? Is that part of this phase, or is that, I know that's something that we will do separate of WSP, but is that going to happen at this point in time, or does that happen later?
Sure. The master planning process for the area south of the tracks was planned for fiscal year 22-23. So we put the budget, the funds tentatively in the budget for next fiscal year. So with that timeline in mind, I've been talking with staff about possibly in January doing a request for proposals so that we can get proposals, review them, come to council in March, and be ready to go April 1st.
Okay. Okay. And in looking at the scope of the project, phase 2 and design phase 3, I noticed it involves a couple of other resources, architectural firm, a firm out of Belleville, I think an engineering firm. What other local resources are involved at this point, if any?
In terms of subcontractors,
Yes.
people working with WSP, I believe Farnsworth Group is one of their
Okay.
Subcontractors, and Mr. Otto.
That's
Who
correct,
else?
yes.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I think that is the local
Okay.
consultant, yes.
Yeah. Ratio is also identified as a subconsultant, and they have an office in Champaign. They actually designed this facility we're sitting in right now.
Okay. So much of the local impact on construction trades won't happen until, obviously, after this is done and into construction. In your estimation, will the design be something that will tap into local trades? I mean, is that something that we've got the skills set for here?
Yes, I'll defer to Mr. Otto in terms of the construction of the underpass and if we anticipate local contractors to be in the mix for that project.
Yes, we do hope that local contractors will be very interested in the project. It's the constructability of it, the traditional box culvert that we were able to negotiate with the railroad. We hope that plays well into the skill set of some local contractors so that we were able to attract their interest in the project.
Okay, good to know. So the last thing kind of that I want to wrap up with, I hope I'm doing okay on time.
Yep, you're good.
Is is that public involvement piece, and that is part of the scope of the project. So I kind of want to finish up where I started off, in that it does say that WSP will coordinate a couple of open houses, public meetings, exhibits, visualizations, and so I would like for you to just sort of describe, and maybe this is for Mr. Otto as well, what might those things be about? What would they be seeking input on? And when would they likely be doing that? Go ahead, Mr. Otto.
Thank you, Ms. Reese. I think the first thing we'll probably see is after WSP is able to start the design and prior to the 60% plan submittal, will likely be the first public open house. They'll generate several architectural renderings for people to react to in terms of, aesthetics. The skeleton, if you will, of the project, the 10-foot high box, 20 feet wide, going under the railroad is pretty well set in terms of what it's going to look like, and it's a concrete box culvert. What we don't have set is what people are going to see, how it's going to feel, what's the landscaping, what's the architectural elements in that going to look like in terms of how it blends with the existing uptown, how it ties into the area to the south of the tracks. Those are the things we'll be looking for public input on, including some basic design elements in terms of how the project will function. So that'll be the first thing you'll see. There's also two council discussions included in the scope. So that'll be WSP helping to facilitate and present to this body to get your input, your public input and opinions in terms of what you want to see as well. And that'll probably occur after the first public meeting. And then we'll just move on down, take those comments, move on down the line. There's several design milestones, 60 and 90. We'll want to have that second public meeting and council input session somewhere between that 60 and 90 timeframe. We want to gather public input and be able to incorporate that into the plans.
Okay, that's the 60% and 90% completion
Yes.
timeframes. Okay.
Prior to those submittals.
Right. So, just to underscore my point, that they are building that into the scope of the project to do public outreach. That is wonderful. Let's seize those opportunities as a council. Let's seize that as I would implore the staff to seize that opportunity to enhance the communication, keep the public engaged in this, is so important. I expressed my concerns about that back in the summertime, and here's our chance to do that. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's all I have. Yeah, just please keep us informed. Obviously, I know that I remember the one other thing I had. There is a piece in here about risk management. Should anything trigger in that risk management section, be it anything dollars related, timeline related, I would expect that those things would come back to the council. Is that a fair statement? I mean, that seems reasonable. Yeah. So, just please keep us informed, or at least keep myself informed. I've got a tremendous interest in this and want to be able to speak fluently and confidently should any resident ask me about this. So, thank you.
I would add, it has been a while since we've had a project like this with recession and COVID, but I think it's important for some of us who have been on council a little bit longer to reiterate the fact that the staff has always done what you've asked for. They have always done that on major projects. The public hearings have been held. There's been a plethora of information on major projects, so I don't see that will be an issue going forward. I mean, this is what our staff does in a very professional manner, and I think that's the least you can expect from them, and they'll probably deliver more than you expect.
Good.
Further on this item, Mr. Nord.
Thank you. This was on the Omnibus budget, or the Omnibus agenda, which, gosh, as Ms. Reese and the mayor have mentioned, this isn't something that's routine, but even on our agenda, it says that all items under the Omnibus vote agenda are considered to be routine in nature. Why is this on the Omnibus agenda?
Well, it was my decision, Mr. Nord, to put it on the omnibus agenda because my experience has been most items on the omnibus agenda get pulled from omnibus. So I figured this was as safe a place to put it as any agenda topic. Council knew it was coming, and so we can talk about it no matter what the positioning is on the agenda.
Okay, I mean, even the municipal code talks about what's on the omnibus agenda. They should be routine. You know, when it's, gosh, we're voting on $23 million, you know,
Well,
once
it's
in a
a-
lifetime thing. I'd like to see it
It's a $3
just,
million project,
there.
and we have contracts on omnibus of this dollar amount pretty frequently.
okay. So the cost for this, it's still estimated at the 23 million, well, almost $24 million project. Is this still based off of pre-COVID numbers?
It's based on the numbers that were generated for the grant. So, numbers that were generated from the grant are from 2019, but that also includes the addition of the $1.25 million in grade crossing protection funds. So we've added those as a cost escalation factor, if you will. We've also included several touch points for project and risk management within the scope of the contract. So those will involve looking at everything that material prices, timeline, things that could slide, things that could escalate in cost. We'll be keeping a close track of those all through the design process. So we're aware of those concerns and want to make sure that we're taking those into account.
Okay, so the numbers are from pre-COVID, because that was when the build grant went
Mr.
off.
Nord, we're not here to
Correct.
talk about the overall project. We're here to talk about Phase 2 and Phase 3 engineering.
Okay, and then with this agreement, any cost overruns, does the federal government or any of these other entities that are providing funding, do they cover any additional, or is it all on local taxpayers?
The grants and the funding sources outside of local sources, those are what they are. Those are the dollar amounts. So any increases in cost would come from local sources or the town.
Okay,
But we can't, if I could jump in and add, the project budget does include contingency.
sure.
And is, and conservative estimates, so.
But we've got construction costs that have increased 50% for other projects and whatnot. So we're still making a decision based on old data. Another question then is the funding source for this. I know, well, back in July, we agreed, the council voted to have funds allocated for next year for this. But you've told the council that there was no money identified in the 5-year budget for this. So where is that money coming from? What projects are being sacrificed for this?
No projects are being sacrificed. I believe the budget would be amended to reflect the expense that we're proposing, because we also know there will be offsetting revenue.
Okay,
makes
so for example,
sense.
yes, that does make sense, because tonight we're being asked to increase property taxes. It comes to about $300,000 would be the town's estimated increase, which would cover the amount
Point of order.
that this cost would be.
Point of order. We're getting off track and we're bringing in other policy and things we have not even discussed and things that are not true. We are far off base right now.
I would agree with that. So let's keep it, the discussion to this item.
Sure. I thought funding source is very relevant to something we're voting on. Another question that I have is, well, so my concern is that local taxpayers are on the hook for 100% of the increases. And without knowing the contingency
Mr. Nord,
dollars you put in,
we seem to
I'm
be
still
going in a
skeptical.
circular conversation here. We're here to talk about this specific item. There will be plenty of opportunity to talk about issues of price increases at such time as they come.
Sure.
I see your point, you're trying to go to a point that we should not do this project. I understand that, and you have made that very clear in many meetings. So tonight, we're talking about a contract for Phase 2 and Phase 3 engineering.
Well, so what I'm doing, I'm trying to get clear to everyone the ramification of our vote. If we go forward with this and we get into it 6-8 months, whatever it is, and then we decide we can't go that we're not going to go forward. It's going to be an abandoned project. We're done. Is it true that then we have to pay all the grant money back? Because the grants require us to go to
Mr.
completion.
Nord, we're not talking about that tonight.
This vote commits us to spend all that money.
You can certainly vote no on this. We're talking about proceeding with the project as it has been approved by this council. And the next logical step is Phase 2 and Phase 3 engineering, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight.
I would also like to echo Ms. Reese's, or Ms. Lorenz's comments on knowing what's happening across the tracks. Because council has mentioned before, we'd like to know what's going on. So we have the big picture as to what the underpass, like how it,
Point of order,
how it
we are
actually
not
fits
talking
in.
about the south side tonight. We are talking about phase 2 and phase 3 of engineering. We need to be back on track.
Okay, well then, I think this decision, there's a lot of relevant information that I feel we're missing. And if we're missing relevant information and we don't know it, that's an ignorant decision because we just aren't aware. Knowing that there's this information
Mr.
missing,
Nord, you're out of
and
order.
we're choosing
Mr.
to
Nord,
make a decision anyway.
Mr. Nord, you are out of order.
How am I out of order?
You are out of order. You keep wanting to take this to a place that is not covered in the issue we're dealing with tonight.
I'm just finishing up my comments.
You are out of order. You can finish your time. You have a few minutes left on your time, but we're not going to talk about the broader concept of the project.
Okay, so when we know that there's information that we don't have, that we're lacking it, then that's a stupid decision because we know we're missing information, and I'm just not comfortable making that decision tonight. I would like this tabled to get more information, or for the council to have more information.
I would need a motion if you want to table.
I move that we table this so we can have some more information as to the ramifications of our decisions.
Is there a second?
Nope.
A motion fails for lack of a second.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
So to get us back to this motion that we're looking at approving the design phase, the normal process is not until we have a design will any contractors be able to come forward with cost estimates for what it will take to build. Is that an accurate statement, Mr. Otto?
The bidding process would allow the contractors to look at the plans, provide costs, and submit a bid. During the design process, we have built into the scope for our construction design team to look at costs and estimate those based on engineering bid tabs, competing costs of what we're seeing going on with pricing throughout the area and the region. So we will do internal design cost estimates with our design team throughout the design process to make sure we're on track.
So the action we are taking tonight to approve the design phase is the appropriate first step in this project to get to the point where we will be able to have a concept that is available for bid and public feedback and moving forward with the actual construction, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. McCarthy? Okay. Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you. I just want to echo the comments of my colleague, Ms. Smith, is for anybody watching at home or here, is that there's a very orderly process to how this all works, and estimates are generally what we start with. To even be able to apply for grants, we have to estimate. And so you never get to what the final cost is until you go out to bid and you're 80% down the planning process path to be able to do this. This is a standard approach. It's very big dollars. And as somebody said, we haven't done a project like this in quite a long time. So, we're all going to be watching carefully, as is staff, and as they always do. But just to level set with everybody, all the public here and at home, this is the normal orderly process of how a project like this evolves. And you can't get final costs and then decide to do engineering. You have to do all of that stuff up front. So thank you for calling that out. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that information. I do just want to say a little bit of a a plug here and a little bit of a celebration. This has been a very long time coming. To see it finally come to this fruition, I'm supportive of this. When this went through a very public input, and it was underpass and overpass and various versions of all of those, this came to us, and I said in this very chamber on one of these mics, maybe it was over there, that I would not be supportive of this project, but for a substantial external funding, and you've brought that to the table as evidenced by the information in our packet, the amount of external funding, over $20 million for it. You didn't hit a home run, you hit a grand slam, is what you did on a really amazing project. So I'm supportive for this very orderly process. I'm supportive. I'll have more timeline questions. Some have been asked and answered already tonight. I won't kick that issue any more than it's already been done tonight, but I'll have more questions for you. Thank you.
Mr. Preston.
Thanks. Just a follow-up for clarity for everyone's sake to a comment that Mrs. Smith was making a minute ago. Is it reasonable to expect that out of the Phase 2 and Phase 3 that we are voting on tonight could come a design and a plan that ends up meeting the bid under which we got our grants in the first place? Could we see out of Phase 2 and Phase 3 design that meets the budget that's already been established for our bids and not lead to quotes coming in that are significantly higher based on what's done in what we're voting on tonight?
Yes, that is the intention of the process, the intention of the internal cost estimating as we move through the design phases that we're intending to do. It is absolutely the intent and the goal to stay within the budget that we've been given.
Yeah, I think staying within the budget that we're given is definitely a wise decision with this, and I support this action if this is one that gets us to that point and continues this project along with all of our state and federal partners too.
Ms. Lorenz?
Yeah, I'll just kind of wrap up something that and reiterate some of the comments that have come after my remarks earlier, and that is that I feel comfortable with the quotes for the professional services that are part of this Phase 2 and 3. And so beginning to talk about what if steel prices, what if availability of raw material, that's premature right now, and I think that was the issue a few moments ago. Those are Phase 3 construction issues. Right now, Phase 2 and 3 design, I feel comfortable, and they're very well detailed out in Exhibit B as far as what the compensation is for this. So I feel comfortable about that, and let's stay very focused on this one. And yes, to Mr. Nord's concerns about raw materials and increases in prices, those are valid concerns. And so to use a couple of metaphors here, that is why we need to make sure that we keep this project on track. And, very much to my point earlier about the communications and, regular standing agenda items for some of our pre-work and regular meetings. So, that on-time, under-budget piece is very, very important to begin tracking going forward, especially in construction phase. But I want to say, too, that, we are past the go, no-go question at this point. So this is a go. The train is leaving the station. It's left the station, and we're going to keep it on track, and we're going to keep it on time, and we're going to keep it under budget. That's our expectation, and I believe that's your expectation too. And I believe that that's how this Exhibit A scope of work has been written, with a risk management section that I feel very good about. So let's follow that. As far as the master planning goes, I feel like an April 1 estimation of starting will be very apropos, and I totally support that happening in the next, early in the next fiscal year. So, thank you.
I'll just add from experience that, no major project that we have done, be it uptown, be it a major road project, whatever, that we have not had to make adaptations along the way because of issues that we weren't aware of when we did this, costs, And staff has always done a very admirable job of reacting to that and keeping things within budget. Further on the item, Mr. Nord.
Does this project include the, I guess, entrances to the tunnel? Like where it comes all the way up to existing grade, which I'm gonna call like the parkish areas? Does it
Yeah.
include all of that?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Trotter. Yes, because that's where the ramp is, the accessible ramp to get from grade, like street grade, down underneath the tracks.
Okay, so we don't have to look at having like a later project to then finish the park and dressing up the whole underpass area later. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's all included here.
Okay, thank you.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Nord?
No,
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The item is approved. We move to general orders, the first item of which is a resolution approving an amended site plan for Rivian, 100 North Rivian Motorway.
Move approval.
Second.
Is there discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Nord?
aye,
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Cummings?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Item 8 is a motion to authorize the preparation of the 2021 property tax levy ordinance.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Is there discussion on this item? Mr. Nord?
With this, we're leaving the rate the same, but don't we give the assessor a flat dollar amount? Or do we give them a rate?
Council adopts the levy, which is the dollar amount we need for the budget moving forward. So we're asking council to adopt a levy in the amount of 13.381 million, as pointed out on page 8-2. So you'll adopt the levy. Most individuals don't talk about a levy, though. They want to talk about the rate and how it impacts their property tax bill. So that's why most taxing bodies talk about how the levy impacts the rate. So by your action tonight, if you agree with our recommended levy, that results in the same rate that was applied last year.
Okay, but it nets the town an additional $326,000 is what you're estimating.
Correct.
Okay.
Divided across all the taxable properties, of which we've had significant growth in EAV and a lot of commercial entities. So yes, that is the dollar amount that would be applied to all taxable properties.
Okay, and last time we had this discussion, we came up with a rate, and then it came before council again for us just to ratify the work that staff had done, and we changed it at the last minute without the public knowing about it. Could you refresh us as to if our vote tonight locks us into anything, or if we're still able to change it last minute like we did last time?
Well, I believe you might be referring to 2019. I
guess you're right, it was 2019.
Okay. 2020, council moved forward with the same process we're proposing now. The first step in terms of the property tax levy adoption is you direct staff to prepare it. That's this. Action, we will come back at your next meeting then with your formal ordinance adopting the property tax rate, levy. So could council then choose to do something different? Yes, if a majority support that.
Okay, then I'm just at a loss as to why this is before us now if this vote is not final.
This is well, I'll defer to Mr. Day.
This is a statutory requirement under the property tax code.
Okay, well, I probably will have to say, I may have to say this again. You know, this just seems like an unnecessary vote for us. If this is simply a formality, I don't understand why we're even proposing anything, because we can change it at the next meeting anyway. but at least the public would know that that's the meeting that they need to show up for if they have input to give us for property taxes. But, you know, I would like to see us not ask for any more money than what we did last year. And some of the reasons why I think we can do that for our citizens, you know, Rivian, they have been building fast. You know, when they do something, I mean, they are quick. They're putting up a huge addition, you know, so we've got tax revenue coming in from them. We've got the marijuana revenue. That tax money is going to be coming in. You know, we already have that. We've doubled our local fuel tax. The state has doubled it. We've got those extra revenues coming in. We've got, what, over $11 million in federal COVID relief funds? You know, relief. I thought this was something to help give our local residents relief. You know, so we're only asking for $300,000, but we've received so much more. You know, I would like to see us take it back down to exactly what we asked them last year because we've got a surplus. I'd like to entertain if anybody else would think that that would be
Mayor?
something you'd be willing to do.
Ms. Reese, go ahead.
If I could make one statement before anyone, if you're making a motion, if I could make one clarification. I don't want council to think that we can use those federal relief dollars to reduce anyone's tax burden, tax obligation, or reduce prices, rates. That is not an eligible use of federal dollars. So just wanted to put that out to be clear. The other thing that maybe to point out in terms of this levy and the breakdown of what the property tax levy is funding, again on page 8-2, it is probably the biggest recipient of these tax dollars is for the organization to meet its pension funding obligation for public safety pensions. And you might recall that a year ago, we implemented a mortality table change based on the recommendations of our actuaries. And we decided, because of that big change of looking at mortality rates, we decided to phase it in over 2 years because it was such a significant impact. So this is phase 2, the final phase of implementing the mortality table changes in our police and fire pension obligation. And so these dollars are helping fund that obligation. You'll also note that we are not using property tax revenues to fund our IMRF the general fund, like we did last year. So we will be using some of those additional revenue sources that you've referred to, Mr. Nord, to fund some of our operations.
So I'm just going to bring us back to ground zero here. If council has the wish to discuss this twice, we will discuss it twice. But the motion is to prepare a levy tonight. That's our motion. We're not voting for a property tax. We're instructing, as required by statute from the state of Illinois, we're instructing staff to prepare a levy. That's our action here tonight.
I totally agree with what you're saying, Mayor, but I feel compelled because your comments about what happened in 2019 circle back to a decision that I made. And what you suggested 2 years ago is exactly what you're suggesting today. Just keep the levy the same. Never mind that you didn't come to the 2-on-1 meeting where we talked about why the levy is where it needs to be. Never mind that you paid attention to those details. 2 years ago, it was a bad idea to just flatten out the levy in a unilateral move without totally understanding what you're doing with that suggestion, and it's a bad idea today. But the difference between me 2 years ago and today is that I realize here at the dais that it's a bad idea. 2 years ago, I got suckered into thinking, well, I think at the time it was $95,000. What's $95,000? I was doing, well, it's a lot of money to me, but I was doing the quick math here on my calculator. And I went along with your idea. A 3-minute decision that I regret to this day. And you continue to remind me of that decision, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say, I don't mind that I changed my mind. And I don't mind admitting that I was wrong in making him and going along with him 2 years ago, but that I righted a wrong by, within the statute, being allowed to change my mind at the following meeting. And for you to sit here and say that this is an irrelevant decision, that alone is violating a statute. Now, I don't know about you, but as a council person, we are here to uphold the laws. So that's point number one. Point number two is I do not want to continue to have to redefine and that's the right word, retell this story of how your idea 2 years ago was a bad one, and it's still a bad one. And I strongly, in wrap-up, strongly encourage you to start attending 2-on-1 meetings again.
Mr. McCarthy,
I'd like to call the previous question.
we have a motion to call the previous question. Is there a second?
Second.
We need a 2/3 majority to do that, so please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Nord?
No.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. Please call the roll on the motion to authorize the preparation of the 2021 property tax levy ordinance.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Nord?
No.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That concludes our general orders. We move to new business. The first is a presentation of the Town of Normal American with Disabilities Act Transition Plan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to invite Mr. Trummel and staff to come forward. Come on forward. And I'll probably get out of the way if needed. Yeah. And, but first I want to just let council know that we're going to present some information about the ADA transition plan update. Staff has spent quite a bit of time in getting to this point. This is an item that we'll present to you. Council does not need to formally adopt the ADA transition plan, but we're just asking you to accept the presentation. I want to particularly thank Mr. Trummel, who's led this initiative, and staff have been on his team, Ms. Olafson, Mr. Clinch, Mr. Otto, and others, to get us to this point. And he and the team have worked very closely with stakeholder groups in the community to get us to this point. So I think it's a great story to tell. As you are aware, after the presentation, they'll be prepared to answer your questions, but then also your following agenda item after this pertains to implementing items from this plan. So we're excited to move forward. So, Mr.
Point of privilege, may I please excuse myself to collect my thoughts?
Certainly.
It's all yours.
Is it this one? I think we'll be okay. All right. So thank you, and very excited to be here tonight, honestly. This has been a long time coming, and I wish it could have been sooner. I want to thank Mrs. Reese specifically for giving me this opportunity. We started down this path about 2 years ago, and she was confident enough to kind of tab me as the ADA coordinator. I'm happy to do that. I really am. It's been a big part of my career with the town, so I'm excited to be able to take on that role. But as you'll see, is we've got maybe a few more than a dozen slides to go through, and then we've got Ryan and Kathy here that'll help support it. And so you don't have to sit here and listen to me talk for what hopefully is just about 10 minutes. So, but very excited to be here. So again, this is, as Ms. Reese indicated, this is our update to our town normal transition plan. And big picture, what this is essentially the town's responsibility to comply with ADA Title II. As a unit of local government, the American with Disabilities Act has requirements for governmental bodies essentially to comply and do what they can to make their programs, services, and activities accessible and inclusive to all members of the community. And so we'll march through some slides here. Just really briefly, we started this process. The ADA itself was established as a federal law in 1990. And then as part of that, in 1992, communities with over 50 employers were required to develop a transition plan. So since that time in 1992, a lot of things have changed. As I reviewed that plan, I think the inventory included about 7 buildings at the time in the town's inventory, and then obviously a myriad of parks and other support services. But that inventory is nearly quadrupled since we last did that comprehensive inventory. So a couple different things too is the depth of our evaluations have gone much deeper as our staff has become more experienced over time. We've had a long-standing relationship with LifeSil. Everybody knows LifeSil is basically the Bloomington Normal's disability advocate. They do a great job. We've had a really good relationship with them. They've been very involved in this process as we've marched forward. And so certainly during 2020, although somewhat subdued by the pandemic and a lot of the effects of what was going on in the world, many of the initiatives that were associated with the 30th anniversary were somewhat stymied, but the town itself did take advantage of that energy and thought it was a great time to renew our plan. Excuse me, as you would expect. Engineer, there you go, thank you. Okay, so to give you just a brief overview of our process, we started this, as I mentioned, in January of 2000. And then really what was part of that was we established an ADA committee.
In January 2020.
I'm sorry.
January of 2020.
We started in January of 2020. Okay, I'm sorry.
You said 20. You said 2000.
My apologies. So in the beginning, again, we started about almost 2 years ago. We established an ADA committee. Okay, now yes, previously, we had a public works director. We had myself as the building director. Accessibility has been an important element of our community for a long time. But I think as part of this process, we felt compelled to take it to a next level. And so really what we did with Ms. Reese's support, and certainly with Mr. Hanson, we established a committee, more than just 1 or 2 people to kind of just wrangle this as best we could. So that was very helpful. I don't want to sit up here and say that this has been a one-man show, because it is not. This has been a great team effort, and you'll see that as we kind of march through these slides. Again, I'll continue to mention LifeSil. They've been great through all this. Kathy will probably speak to this in a little bit, but I think it was day 2 or 3 of her employment with us. I handed her, I think it was a 60-page audit from a consultant who looked at our website and said, we have a little work to do. And so that was day 2 for Kathy, and we've done a lot of work since then, and she'll kind of elaborate on that as we get to it. The ADA Title II itself requires that a community do a self-evaluation, meaning like we essentially review our work. And essentially what I mean by work is that anything the town provides for or requires of its citizens essentially is meant to be accessible or inclusive. That doesn't just mean buildings or parking spaces or curb ramps. It's everything we do. It's our communications, it's our parks and recs programs, it's our police offerings. It's things that we accommodate through the fire department. It's just everything we touch and do needs to be thought of through the accessible lens. And so that's been a great part of this exercise. And so as we prepared our self-evaluation, and it involved a lot of different departments, we led to the development or update to our transition plan. The committee itself, you'll recognize those names, and I guess those to me are less important. What I do want you to focus on maybe is the positions, and there's more to this than just 6 people you see on the slides, but we think that these are pretty strategic positions to help an accessibility and a transition plan stay sustainable for a long period of time. So I think with the mix of people, or mix of positions you see up there, that's what this plan will do. So again, that's very much part of this plan, is to establish this committee and include these positions, as well as many other support staff to help us get to where we're at. So the ADA evaluation itself, what that includes are, and I'm not going to read these through, but essentially it's kind of what I talked about before. It's everything that we offer or do or require of our citizens. And so, you know, we're certainly going to focus on probably those top 4 or 5 tonight a little bit. But there's other things that we do routinely, employment practices, training for our staff, which we'll touch on. But on the top is really what we want to focus on a little bit tonight, where we spent a lot of energy these past couple of years. So again, as a government body with 50 or more employees, we're required to do this self-evaluation, which also leads to a transition plan. And so as part of that transition plan, that exercise is to help you identify what could be considered or are considered accessibility barriers. And then we establish a method. What do we do to mitigate these barriers? We have a process where we take our transition plan and we put it out for public review and comment, and we did that. We'll touch on that a little bit about some of our partners and stakeholders who were involved in that. I always kind of cringe at this one. We designated ADA coordinator. It's very important, I think, as we've worked with folks from the disability community and LifeSil, one of the common threads is that who do I call, who do I talk to, who's my center point to get answers, and that's really important to us. That's kind of an organizational philosophy for the town itself, but certainly when it comes to this transition plan and this initiative, we want to make it bloody clear that there's a point person to call, and then ultimately we will get you an answer or get some direction for you. So at this point, I'm going to stop yapping a little bit and let Kathy kind of tag team here a little bit and talk about our communications.
All right. I actually wasn't going to point out that Greg approached me on day 2, but that is indeed true of my employment with the town, to tell me about the website audit, which was done by the Illinois Assistive Technology Program, and identified several deficiencies that our website had. We have since gone through a website update, which behind the scenes addressed the technical coding issues that existed. And since then, my team has gone through a content review with every department. We've also gone through a quality control review with our website platform provider, Civic Plus. We've asked for another iteration of that because we recognize that, as Greg said, there's always going to be work for us to be doing, but we want to make sure that everyone is aware of these issues and putting content out with the intent that it is as accessible as possible. So I feel really good about the work that we've done since that second day of mine on the job. My team also went through some training about implementing people first language into how we're talking about the programs and services that we provide and the people that we're providing those programs and services to, and that's really important. Everything from the way that links are written on our website to the color contrast of images and text on color, we're thinking about all of those things. And then we did change the architecture of the website slightly to add an accessibility tab, as Greg indicated. This was a big change that we heard from our partners in the community, that they wanted it to be really easy to contact the town and to know who to contact at the town. And they wanted the accountability of a central person. That's not to say that our other departments weren't already being responsive, but it provides the town with a level of accountability to have Greg be that central point of feedback for folks. Our website does have an enormous amount of content on it, including PowerPoint, presentations, and reports. To change all of those to meet the ADA accessibility requirements would be an immense outlay of time and energy. And so one of the strategies that we've implemented along with our platform provider is to put this disclaimer that you see on the pages where those reports and agenda items, PowerPoints are most typically downloaded, to let people know that, hey, if you're downloading something and it's not in an accessible format, contact us and we will make that accommodation for you immediately. So that's how we've tried to make a good use of town resource and still address the need for everyone in our community.
And Kathy, if you don't mind touching on.
Certainly. You know, our Parks and Rec and our Cultural Arts departments, they scale our programming to make accommodations for citizens and families and children that they serve. And you can see all of the different programs and activities that we review. If someone signs up for a Parks and Rec program and needs an accommodation, they scale it to meet those needs. Same with the Cultural Arts and the Children's Discovery Museum. So our staff is very aware of the need to, you know, make accommodations where available, and are very responsive in that regard as well.
And again, this list is not meant to be fully inclusive, but just to give you a sampling of, it's more than just accessible parking spaces and accessible restrooms and that type of thing. It's all the programs and services that we offer, so.
Another component that we've been looking at is our facilities within the public rights-of-way. That includes sidewalks, curb ramps, crossings for where we cross our public streets, and equipment, including traffic signals. You can see the graphics on the slide show where we're at with our rating system. We've rated approximately 73% of the sidewalks within the town, and we're doing that internally with our own staff as well as interns through ISU. We've made a lot of progress, especially this last summer, in terms of evaluating our sidewalks for various deficiencies, and you can see we've got a lot of good sidewalks, but we also have some sidewalks that need work. So through the budget process, we plan to identify funding to begin a plan to correct those. We have a very knowledgeable staff that anything we install new meets the current codes, and so we're also looking at improving gaps. That's one area that is important not to forget, is areas where people need to get to but can't currently because there's no sidewalks. So we also want to keep those things in mind as well.
Thanks, Frank. So then the last piece is the building facilities and evaluation. So again, that's something that Mark Lynch, our facilities management director, and then Scott Williams, who's our commercial building inspector. I can't say enough about his knowledge and his expertise and his desire to try and make our community as accessible as possible. He does a great job. So the three of us spent the last probably 12 months going through the town's facilities, buildings and facilities, doing our evaluation, using the ADA 2010 priority checklist, and essentially focuses on those four things. Basically, how do you get into the front door from the sidewalk, from a bus stop, from the parking space into the front door? And then once you're in the door, you know, how do you get to the goods and services of what's being offered, be it a library or a theater or city hall? Restrooms certainly are one of the major elements that we spend a lot of time on. And then other incidental features, communications, telephones, fare machines, all kinds of different things that actually the accessibility code struggles to keep up with a little bit in the real world, but those are the things that we use. And so, and again, as part of our self-evaluation, you know, we evaluated 30+ buildings and facilities, and we're still working on those. And I don't know if you've had the opportunity, but if you go to our accessibility tab on the website, down below you'll find Ryan's inventory, some of the information Kathy's already touched on, but then there will be individual files for each of the facilities we've evaluated. And it'll basically tell you, here's the findings of our inventory from the library or from the theater or from City Hall. And so those are very good tools, and that's what, pending this action tonight with an award to a contractor, those are the things we're going to start having to get some work done and remove barriers. So again, that is, the buildings themselves are in pretty good shape. We have some support parks type services to continue to take a look at, but as the weather breaks next spring, we're going to stay on top of those. The actual transition plan itself, so the evaluation process, that's us doing our homework and running through our buildings and doing our inventories, that eventually leads to the development of an actual transition plan. So once we had that put together, basically by late summer, I think it was in August, as part of a transition plan, you have a stakeholders meeting and seek public input. And I know a couple of council members were able to participate or be there for part of that. We had a great turnout. I think we had maybe 25. We had invited 30 plus partners or stakeholders, but I think we had a good turnout that night, maybe 15 or 20 of those folks be able to participate. But we shared the information about what was going on in there and told them our game plan and our approach, and shared with them how we did these inventories and where they could be found to be reviewed and that kind of thing. So it was good work, and it was good feedback that night. These are the stakeholders we invited, and again, they're, you know, did we miss some people? Probably. We did. What you don't see on this list is, in my time with the town, I've developed relationships with a lot of individual citizens who have a disability of sorts. They were invited. One or two of them was able to participate, but as time has marched on, and I think the three of us could sit up here and say that we have relationships, and as does everybody, probably in some fashion or form, whether it's family or friend, coworker, that is affected by a disability. And so we all live it, and it's important to all of us. But these are our partners that were included in that stakeholders meeting. We had good feedback and good participation. In fact, we've had a couple of follow-up presentations with some of the folks on this list. As part of this process, and it would again identified in the plan, we issued a survey. And Kathy, I don't know if you want to share a little bit on how that worked, or
Yeah, it was a simple survey, not necessarily enough respondents to be representative of the entire community, but certainly people who are very engaged and interested in accessibility of the town. We ended up having more than 80 people respond, and we were asking them to rate the priorities of the barriers that exist, and this list here on this slide illustrates those priorities that were noted in the survey by our respondents.
And none of this was, I would say, shocking to us. I will say too that in Ryan's 3 short years with the town, I'd probably run out of fingers on one hand on how many times he's responded kind of on the spot to an accessibility concern. And that's great to have that flexibility and to have the support from the council and from Pam to be able to do these kind of things. And we have the ability to be a little flexible and deal. We can't respond and just all of a sudden do a landmark sidewalk project of that magnitude. But we can certainly respond to a neighborhood curb ramp and that kind of thing. And so we've been able to do that, and it's been great. So again, not shocked by some of the findings and the results. Another part of the transition plan is training our workforce. And Kathy touched on this a little bit, and we've done several. It had been a couple of years. I think back in 2017 or 18, we had Lifestyle come in and again do some, at that time, it was just basically disability etiquette training. And we generally target these toward our supervisory base, which includes 75 to 80 people. Then their charge is to take it back to their rank and file and spread the word. And so, and again, about a month ago, we coordinated with Heartland Community College. And again, we did some bias training for our supervisory base over a 2-day period, which was great. And as part of that, we took advantage of pulling our teams together. And then the ADA team itself kind of gave our supervisory base an overview of this plan to let them know. A lot of them got the handle on this as we were doing the building inventories. They see 3 or 4 people walking around with clipboards going through their buildings. They're like, what are you guys up to here? And we started, telling them what we're up to, and we'll be back. But no, and that's going to be our charge, is to continue to try and keep our employees educated as best possible. So our next steps. Again, we'll wrap up here. Our next steps are we've done what we feel like is a good evaluation. We've gotten a good 2021 status of where we're at. I will be honest and tell you that as I sit up here, it would be arrogant for me or any ADA coordinator or anybody on behalf of a community to sit up here and say, we're great, we're clean, we don't have any issues. That's silly. That's just not the case. I will say we're always going to strive to keep working to remove barriers. We're never going to be done. I think that just is being fair and honest. As we either add buildings or facilities or things to our inventory, that's certainly one of the first things we look at. Is it accessible? Is it inclusive? And so those are the things we're going to work on. But I know I feel really confident in this plan, in establishing this team and putting this together where we meet quarterly. I personally meet with Lifestyle on a monthly basis. This is my opportunity to give Conan Calhoun a shout out. The guy's been a rock star for us. He's a great advocate for our community as a lifestyle representative, and so they've been really a great ally. And through this opportunity, I've been able to expand our relationships where it's, now even Conan knows 6 or 7 different people to call with the town of Normal instead of just calling Trummel about a question. And we're always happy to do that. But I think that's what they value, is that we need to grow our relationships with people in the community to make this a better plan. So, having said that, we're happy to take some questions, but I think really the next action that you'll consider, and we hope you're supportive of this concept, is that we're going to ask you to consider a contract with a contractor to work on doing work to remove barriers. So I'm happy to entertain questions.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you for such a great summary and all the work. Couple of things. Just congratulations and thank you, of course, first of all, for everybody involved. As I listened to some of this, some of it I wasn't anticipating when I knew it was first going on, and then as I started to dig a little bit into what you all were up to, the communication piece, I think is critical. All of what you're doing is really economic development. I'm always going to bring it back to that in some way, shape, or form. As we think about governments and communities being smarter cities, part of what we're talking about is certainly us using available technology to be more efficient and effective in delivering the goods and services that we provide to our communities at a cost-effective as we can be. But the access to information and services and the ability to interact with your government is online is only going to increase. Mm-hmm. It's increasing rapidly now, and it's only going to continue to increase. So from a social equity perspective, the ability to tackle that now as early in the smarter city map that we don't even have yet for our community was really great for me to see that was being included. No shade to all of the physical facilities. I knew also what was a little surprising to me, I knew we had increased our facilities dramatically, but since the first look at this, a 4-fold increase in our asset base, that's quite a rapid increase in public facilities, and now to be able to go back and go, okay, where can we do better in allowing our citizens to use all of that, I think is super admirable. I just touched on one thing with maybe a little indulgence, Mayor, if I might. I think the quality of this plan is probably best assessed by those in the industry. And we got a letter from the executive director of LifeSil, the Life Center for Independent Living, who gave us an opinion about our efforts, and just used part of my time to read that. This is from Ricky Lee Beneke, the executive director, the head of the Life Center for Independent Living. She said, "I would like to congratulate the town of Normal on such a comprehensive ADA Title II transition plan. The amount of time and effort that went into developing this plan does not go unnoticed. This plan is one of the most thorough that I have seen in my nearly 20 years experience in the disability community. Many thanks to your staff for their commitment to accessibility and their eagerness to work towards a more inclusive community. I trust that the council will endorse this plan and remain vigilant in their efforts to ensure that the town is progressing towards a community that is accessible to everyone. LifeSil looks forward to continuing our partnership with you to achieve our mutual goals." I guess I'll just wrap up this segment to say those partnerships, I agree, that you talked about, Mr. Trammell, are very, very important. Clearly, you've made an impact on the community agency that is our resource partner for these type of things, and everybody that at hand. So again, I just want to thank you for that and fostering this relationship. And I also want to appreciate the humbleness of the group to understand that we're not perfect, and that more perfect is the goal over time, and that you'll stay vigilant. Thank you.
Ms. Cummings?
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would like to start off with saying how excited I am to see this plan be put forth in place. I know I got ahead of myself a couple times and had to be reeled back in, but I knew it was coming, and I'm glad we're here today. And so much information has been shared, and I'm looking forward to what we continue to do to make the shift in our community. Pardon my ignorance slightly here in my question, and hopefully it's one you can answer. It's not a I got you moment, I promise. I noticed that we utilized the 2010 ADA standards. Is there any anticipation of a newer one coming out? Because I know there's some things that have changed or is changing in that landscape. And so my concern is, I know we're probably using it because it's what's available, but is there any anticipation of them addressing some of the more recent needs or discussions around some ADA accommodations?
I think the safe answer is yes.
Okay.
But per the act right now, which was amended in 2009, they made reference to the 2010 standards, which took into account a lot of new things that came into the world that maybe weren't here in 1990. The internet, a lot of different things. So, but I'll also qualify that by saying that this specifically applies to like our existing buildings. What I don't want to get lost in the conversation too is that our department, the town itself, as far as development and construction goes, whether it's a public facility like the one we're sitting in or private sector communities or developments, we use the current Illinois accessibility standard and then Illinois accessibility code. The building code has an accessibility chapter, so there are 3 different documents that are used. And so certainly the one that the rule book we're playing by for the purpose of this evaluation has some dated information, but it will be updated again. But I would say that like when this facility was constructed, there are far more modern standards that are in the industry that we're using too on new construction and that kind of thing, or remodeling.
Gotcha.
Hopefully that answered your question.
It did. So thank you for that information, and that's very helpful and useful. But again, kudos to you all for working on this and bringing this forth tonight. I'm excited to see all the changes that are to come behind this, and for us to continue to be a truly inclusive community.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
Catch the beginning of that meeting, and like you, I was pleased to see so much representation across a number of stakeholders and their organizations. One of the things, if you could comment on, you're emphasizing that this is a transition plan for the town and public-owned property. When does zoning and planning get involved in private property owners updating
Sure.
to make their properties accessible?
Great question. And again, the presentation tonight was geared toward the local government role, but that's a good question, Ms. Smith. It always has been. And so, for example, our triggers for private development are generally tied to remodeling or certainly new construction. And so if it's new construction, it's a layer in several that our departments, engineering, water, building inspection, zoning, will get involved in. On existing buildings in the private sector, it's tied to basically work that's being done, so new work. So for example, if you're going to go in and remodel your building, essentially there are some basics. How do you get in the front door? And then what are you essentially touching? And so that there are some scoping provisions, but generally speaking, again, I'll put our team up against anybody when it comes to taking accessibility very seriously in whether it's a remodel or new construction. And so I hope that answers your question, is that essentially it's tied to triggers. Sometimes it could be tied to a complaint from a private citizen. But then again, that's going to come back potentially through the Attorney General's office, where the first thing they'll ask for is, has there work that's been done that would trigger the need for this to be compliant?
Well, I'm so appreciative of the town in incorporating accessibility in changes at the parks and the new ramp that you have to the trail across the street from the Connie Link Amphitheater, so that anyone wanting to park there can easily get to the trail. The landmark sidewalk is awesome. And I was meeting with Connect Transit and say they very much want to put a nice shelter there, but there are another number of parties to coordinate with that. So one of the reasons I was bringing out the need to coordinate with private property owners is there's more players involved when you get in outside of public-owned spaces.
Absolutely, yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Nord?
Thank you again. It was always good to hear it again. Anyway, this will be kind of redundant from what we talked about before, but I want the public to hear this as well. When I first got involved, the relationship wasn't that great. So I am pleased that things have progressed to where they are now. Conan has, said that things are great. So, my hat's off to you for everything you've done in the short amount of time. And I don't know what was going on before, but you're getting kudos. So keep it up. And then the other thing is, I understand that this is just for like town and normal owned properties is like your scope for being the ADA point of contact. But, folks are going to learn that you're the ADA point of contact. So they may contact you for, Connect Transit issues or other issues where this body kind of oversees somewhat,
Yep.
or we appoint people to these bodies. So my request is, I understand this is kind of out of the scope of what it was originally set up for, but you're going to be someone that people are going to contact. Please don't push them off and say, that's a Connect Transit issue, you need to talk with them. Use the power of the town of Normal to help them, to help bring any of these other areas into more compliance, or at least so people that call don't feel like they're getting the runaround, that, hey, now I have to call someone else. So, if that means, I don't know, time has to shift or something, I would support that, just so that way you're the point of contact. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Preston?
Thanks, Mayor. I was really glad to see Director Benecki's email come through earlier today from Lifestill, and I was glad that it was read here at the table tonight. I think that is as good a testament probably as anything. So thank you to all of you for doing this work with care and doing it very intentionally. Not just, one more thing you guys have to do, but really going all in on it. I think that will pay dividends for our entire community, and I'm really appreciative and glad that that's the approach that was taken. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm just going to say one brief thing, and what I noticed tonight, which very much stood out, was the passion that you have as a team for this very issue. It's very clear that this is incredibly important to you as representatives of the town, and so thank you for having that passion.
Thank you.
I think
Thank you.
we'll
And
move to the next
and again,
item.
I
Thank you.
will just say
Sir.
one more time is that I can't thank Ms. Reese enough for this opportunity, because again, this has been, this is overdue, but it's super important to the community, and she's given me a lot of flexibility and a lot of time and a lot of adaptability to be able to pull together teams. And trust me, this goes beyond the 5 or 6 of us that have been talked about tonight. We've got a good deep bench of people that are helping us, so thank you for your support too.
Great.
Thank you.
Item 10, having to do with the ADA transition plan, is a resolution accepting the proposal of and authorizing the execution of a work order-based contract with J. Spencer Construction LLC for general contractor services for projects identified in the Town of Normal ADA Title II Transition Plan Update 2021.
Move approval. Second.
Thank you. Is there, get right to it. Is there discussion on this item?
That'd be the longest title we've read in a while.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Nord?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Enthusiastically, aye.
Mrs. Loren?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The item is approved. Item 11 is a motion to approve a reappointment of Mr. Carl Teichman to the McLean County Regional Planning Commission.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Is there discussion on this item? Mr. Nord?
Has the public been informed who the appointment is prior to the mayor just saying it?
Mr. Nord, that, in the exact same question came up 2 weeks ago. My answer will be the exact same it was 2 weeks ago. The public just heard the name when Mayor Coos just mentioned it.
Okay, then my comment's going to be the same. In Bloomington, folks know, so that way people have the chance to give their elected representatives public comment. We don't have that option here, and, I feel that they should. So we're at least on par, and, again, is this a vote that we are required to say yes to without getting
Point of order.
any input?
Point of
Miss-
order.
I didn't know if I'm.
We're voting to do this reappointment. It's a yes or no. We don't have to get down to the policy of whether or not we're rubber stamping or whatever's trying to be proven here tonight. Either you vote yes or you just vote no.
I'm going to allow this discussion to proceed just a little bit longer. I think it's appropriate. So your question again, Mr. Nord?
Is the policy that we are supposed to vote yes to anybody that's brought before us?
No, that is not a policy.
Okay. Thank you.
Further on this item? Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, just to take a minute or two longer before we take a vote on this. This has clearly been a topic that keeps getting repeated and repeated. This looks like a solution trying to find a problem. We have a system that's been in place for I don't know how many decades here, and Ms. Cummings, our colleague, gave a perspective on our form of government, and what's typically done is our method and our process where the mayor appoints people to our boards and commissions. And I, for one, want to commend everybody on our boards and commissions because I think they do a fabulous job. I don't think we have a broken problem on our boards and commissions. I think the appointment process has been working very well, and they do great work, and they provide an amazing service to us council here at the dais. I also want to express a concern of the over-politicizing and interjecting politics into boards and commissions by attempting to make them the subject of vote and public statements. I think all that will do is serve to disincentivize people from wanting to serve on public boards because they'll be subject to the increasingly polarized political climate that we find ourselves in today. And so I'm reticent to discuss, debate, move in that direction at all because A, I don't think it's broken, and B, I don't think we need to interject more politics and more divisiveness into our process. And so it's been a long time coming. Again, this conversation or this point's been brought up again and again and again, and I think it's worth commenting on that there is another perspective here, and we don't have a broken system. If we were having problems, then maybe that'd be something to talk about, but we don't have any problems. So thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Nord?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. Mr. Teichman is reappointed, and Mr. McCarthy, if you want to give what little bio I think you have in front of you. I think Mr. Teichman's well-known to the community.
I was just going to say, Mr. Teichman is very well known in our community. He's been a public servant in our community for a very, very long time in various capacities and various boards. But for this public service, he's been reported to the McLean County Regional Planning Commission. He was our 2017 Citizen of the Year here in the town of Normal, recognized for, as I just mentioned, his many, many, many public service roles here in our community. He works at Illinois Wesleyan University since 1979 as the Director of Government and Community Relations, which means his job has him out in the community in addition to all of his public service. His current term on the Regional Planning Commission expires December 31st of this year. His new 3-year term will expire December 31st on 2024. Welcome back, Mr. Teichman, and thank you for your service.
Before taking a motion to adjourn to executive session, are there council concerns or comments? Mr. Preston?
Mayor? Do we have public, Mayor, we have one public commenter?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Ms. Lund, I apologize for that. We do
Sorry,
have a public
counsel.
commenter at the end of the meeting. As a planning commissioner, I think you know the rule that you got to state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes of
I do.
comment.
Thank you very much. My name is Rachel Lund. I reside at 3475 Enclave Way in Normal, and I swear to tell the truth. Good evening. November is Diabetes Awareness Month, and in honor of this occasion, I would like to share my personal journey with type 1 diabetes. And you all may have heard my insulin pump alarm going off earlier a couple times tonight, so my apologies for that, for the interruption. But my goal here tonight is to help raise awareness within our community about the symptoms of diabetes so that others will know what to look for. Hopefully they can catch it as early as possible and get treatment before any irreversible bodily harm is done. I used to wear contacts all the time. It was actually rare for people to see me wearing glasses. About 4 years ago, I remember one day I was fine, and then the next day my eyes were so dry that I couldn't keep contacts in my eyes for more than a few minutes. I had no idea that this was an early symptom of diabetes. Even my eye doctor missed it. He told me I had dry eye and gave me some drops. About a year later, in 2018, I visited my doctor, and by the way, that was a doctor not here in Normal. About a year later, in 2018, I visited my regular doctor for an annual checkup when they noticed that my glucose levels were elevated. The doctor asked me if I ever had a problem with diabetes, and I assumed he meant with my family history because I was healthy, I ate a good diet, I was an athlete. Unfortunately, blood work confirmed that my glucose was in the diabetic range. I had no idea what diabetes was. I didn't understand what the doctor was telling me, and I didn't know what to do about it. Instead of getting treatment, I avoided the issue altogether because I didn't feel sick. Little did I know I was already experiencing symptoms. I ignored my diabetes for a year and a half until I began experiencing more severe symptoms such as extreme thirst, cramping in my feet and legs, and weight loss. I dropped down to 115 pounds, which is the smallest I've ever weighed in my adult life. These symptoms convinced me to see a doctor again, here in Normal. Testing showed that my glucose numbers had more than doubled, and my A1C was literally off the chart. I was officially diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in December of 2019, and I came to terms with the fact that my life would be forever changed. If you suspect that you or a loved one might have diabetes, please contact your medical provider. If you are diagnosed with any type of diabetes, please take it seriously and begin treatment as soon as possible. And my hope is that if my story can reach and help just one person, then my time here tonight will have been time well spent. Thank you all very much.
And now we'll go to council concerns and comments, and Mr. Preston had the first shot at it, and then Ms. Cummings.
Thanks. Just one tonight. It struck me earlier when we were actually not discussing, but voting on the amended site plan for Rivian, that the planning for a 600,000 square foot addition is not even the most exciting or interesting thing that's been going on there the last week or two. And what a testament to that team, that entire team at Rivian. And I just, from the sidelines, could not be more enthusiastic and proud that those vehicles are and will be made normal with all the success that they're and all the buzz that they're really generating.
Thank you. Ms. Cummings?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. As we close, there's a couple things I have. First, I want to say I'm wearing my blue tonight, actually in support of Diabetes Awareness Month. This is also important for me, having a grandmother who had diabetes, a sister who is known for having gestational diabetes, and I can sometimes run in pre-diabetic circles because I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so when I tell people it's my life on how I eat and exercise, it's because I could be diabetic if I didn't do those things, having polycystic ovarian syndrome. So I am a very strong supporter of Diabetes Awareness Month and know how important it is that we share that information to our communities. And no one is exempt from getting diabetes. A lot of people will think because they're an athlete or because they're young. I have a friend whose son was diagnosed at, I believe, 8 years old for having diabetes. So no one is exempt from it. There's, we talked about type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and gestational diabetes. And there's plenty of information out there. But always, and I know Ms. Lund covered many of the symptoms, so be aware of those as well, especially when you're in the presence of someone. I remember having to keep glucose tabs nearby for my grandmother. So these things are real, and they impact all of us, and it takes a community to kind of go through these things and be there for one another. Also, we are coming into the holiday season. And so it's, we go through all of this and we have all of this, but I want to wish everyone a very, very happy Thanksgiving. I know maybe some more families will get together this year than they did last year. And if you are able to, I implore you to hug very tightly those who you're able to gather with during this time, if you can. If not, at least get on Zoom or Skype and blow kisses into the camera, because life is short. And so I want you to make sure that you're capturing these grand moments and do exactly what the first part of Thanksgiving say, be thankful for those you have. And so with that, I wish you well, be safe for those who are traveling, and for those who are coming to our town to visit your family, welcome to normal.
Ms. Smith?
I just have an update on the collection for landscape. You may have noticed the town put out a notice that the landscape waste pickup will end Wednesday, November 24th, next week. And just to clarify, that's not the leaf vacuuming, but if you have hedges to be trimmed or you have limbs falling down, you need to get those to the curbs by your pickup day before the 24th. Otherwise, you'll have to hold them at your site or deliver them yourself at the town's place. And if you do have them, don't try to sneak them into your leaf pile because it will jam up those vacuuming hoses. But just to get you aware of that, because I know the weather's turning cold and you might be trying to squeeze in some last-minute landscaping work before the snows come. But the leaf collections will continue, but the landscape waste is ending on the 24th. Thanks.
Further? Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, I want to build just a minute on the call out to Rivian. Anybody heard any Rivian news lately? I didn't want a meeting to go by without acknowledging the wonderful IPO news that's happened in our community. To imagine from 2016 when a startup, very much a startup company, senior executive sat in front of us to pitch us partnering with them in our community. Holy cow, I couldn't have imagined where we are today by our willingness and gratefulness to our council members for their willingness to support that. It's, for anybody who watched R.J. Scaringe ring the NASDAQ bell from the Rosemary factory, it's pretty amazing when you think about all of that. If you're not in that world, it's hard to fathom the reach that this is getting globally and the attention that's being brought to bear to our community. I have a friend who, I'll just say he's in the investment banking industry. I got a message from New York on Rivian IPO day and said, today we are the proud owners of Rivian stock. Congratulations to you, the town of Normal, and all your community involved. What an incredible opportunity you've helped to usher into your community. You're very fortunate. Best of luck. That's from Wall Street, folks. Wall Street is paying attention to what's happening in Normal, Illinois, because of our willingness to do this. I'm grateful that everybody had the willingness to say yes to the opportunity. Economic development in the government is not without risk, but is also not without reward. I wish I could say we could do one of these every few years, but in reality, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But I just wanted to say congratulations to them, to Rivian, R.J. Scaringe, and all of the team. Unfortunately, the reps left already, Zach and Dietmeyer and company, but well-deserved and very grateful that they chose us and we chose them. Thanks, Mayor.
I'll just add some of those early meetings, Mr. McCarthy, that there were probably a group of people talking about Rivian coming to this community, and I can think of about 5 or 6 people that had no idea or solid belief that the company would be where it is today, and that would be me and some town staff and R.J. Scaringe and his staff. It's been quite a ride. Any other comments? Motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss matters of land acquisition.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Ms. Cummings? Aye. Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Nord?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Aye.